We've come to that time in the program again where we're down to our last guest, but one could say we've saved the best for last.
We absolutely have.
It's the Travel Michigan radio program. I'm Dave Lorenz, along with Michelle Grinnell. And Michelle, where are we headed to?
We are headed to the Mackinac State Historic Parks, Mackinac Island and surrounding areas. And we have Phil Porter, who is the director, here to tell us all about it. And Phil, I have to say, whenever we did family trips up to the Upper Peninsula, which we did often, it was a special treat if we got to stop along the way and stop at the Mackinac State Historic Parks and enjoy all of the activities there. So you guys have a lot going on. Start by just, what does the Mackinac State Historic Parks encompass?
Well, thanks, Dave and Michelle, and I'm glad you were able to stop with your family when you came up. I hope that tradition of family vacations continues this year, because it's something that people have been doing for many, many decades. Mackinac has been a summer destination for travelers, and it's because there's so much here in the Straits of Mackinac to offer, and we are very fortunate at Mackinac State Historic Parks to be the stewards of 3 state parks in the area, and within these state parks there's a number of historic and natural resources for people to enjoy.
Well, Phil, as you mentioned, and as kind of Michelle led you into it, this is a place where people for generations have come to learn a little bit about history, about Michigan history, and to be entertained at the same time. And I know that's going to continue for generations to come because of all that you offer.
Well, thanks, Dave. Yeah, again, with our parks, there is such a variety of historic resources and sites and things to do, and just in our history alone, we have everything from the 18th century Colonial Michilimackinac here in Mackinac City, where we have reconstructed this fort and fur trading village, to the 19th century Fort Mackinac on Mackinac Island, and the 20th century things that we have at all of our different sites for people to enjoy. Mill Creek State Park is our third major site, and there we have historic Mill Creek Discovery Park, where we not only interpret the history of that site as a saw mill and an industrial center, but also the natural history and how we take people on wonderful natural history hikes using our high ropes course. We have a climbing wall, we have a Burma bridge that goes over the creek that people are allowed to go on, and then we have the zip line as well, that all is tied into the natural history of the area as well.
Well, I have to say, as somebody who enjoys the parks myself, your folks are trained so well. They're friendly, they're informative. I mean, they do everything just right.
Well, thank you for saying so. We do have a staff of about 100 people in the summer that we put on to basically make sure that our sites are in good shape and that they're warm and welcoming to the people that come. We have grounds crew, we have guest services people, and then we have our interpreters, and we work real hard at making sure that they treat every visitor as a respected guest.
Well, I think that living history piece of it is always fascinating, because it really helps showcase what life may have been like, and it gives a whole new dimension to the experience.
That's a really good point, and we work very hard to try and make the connection between the historical research that we do on the site and those programs. A good example would be our historic house interpreters at Colonial Michilimackinac. Now, the research there is not only the documentary research, but also we've been doing archaeology and continue to do archaeology every year at Michilimackinac since 1959. And that not only tells us where the buildings are, but the artifacts that come out of there tell us how people lived. And so that information is then shared with the frontline staff, with the costumed interpretive staff, so that when they're doing cooking presentations or they're doing craft demonstrations inside, it very much ties into what we are able to document happened on that site, 250, 300 years ago.
Does that work continue today, that research and all that digging, or are you basically, through that part of the research?
No. That's one of the really exciting things about working here is that there is so much still to discover. We continue to do an archaeological field study every summer at Michilimackinac. Right now we are working on the Southeast Row House and doing excavations there. And our excavations are done as a part of our public programming. So it's done 7 days a week. Whenever people come, we'll have interpreters there, and the staff is trained not only to dig, but also to welcome people and to explain to them and show them and let them handle the artifacts that are coming out of the ground, so they can really see history being unearthed, and then they can walk in one of our kitchens and see one of the staff people cooking a meal, perhaps using the right kind of utensils, the right kind of recipes based on the information they're finding in the ground.
Of course, your docents tell stories from the area on an everyday basis. What would be, if you were to pick your favorite story, your most interesting story, what do you think that would be?
I think the story that I find interesting, and really it probably is one of the most universally known stories about Mackinac, happens to be the Beaumont story on Mackinac Island. That is the story where on June 6th, 1822, a young French-Canadian voyageur on Mackinac Island was doing business in the American Fur Company's retail store when he was accidentally shot. The wound was taken care of by the post doctor at Fort Mackinac, Dr. William Beaumont. It healed in a very unusual way, so that there was a permanent hole into his stomach. It healed, but it was permanently there, and the doctor, over a period of 11 years, beginning at Fort Mackinac, in his own quarters, did experiments on the stomach, on the process of human digestion through this hole in the man's stomach, and helped discover the process of human digestion, and it's still a story that is told in medical schools today. A fascinating story that is just a part of Mackinac's rich history.
Well, of course, you're still kind of demonstrating things that happened in the War of 1812, 13, 14. And this year, you'll be doing more to recognize those important things that happened up on the island.
Yes, we have lots of exciting things that go on every day throughout all of the years, but this year in particular, at Fort Mackinac on the island, we are continuing to commemorate the War of 1812. There aren't many places in Michigan that have physical remains of history going back 200 years. Fort Mackinac and Mackinac is one of them. During the War of 1812, there were two significant battles. In 1812, the British captured the fort, and then in 1814, the Americans tried to recapture Mackinac Island on August 4th, 1814. So 200 years ago, this August will be a significant date in the rich history of Mackinac, and we're going to do a very dramatic reenactment of the Battle of Mackinac Island on the actual battlefield, which is now Wawashkamo Golf Course. We're working with the golf club out there, and we're going to do a very exciting reenactment. But all through the summer at Fort Mackinac, we will have costumed interpreters in the War of 1812 period uniforms doing walking tours and demonstrations and music presentations about the War of 1812, so that our visitors can learn more about and appreciate the significant history of Mackinac in that event that took place 200 years ago.
I often have people ask me why the people dress as they do at the fort, because it kind of surprises them the type of uniforms that the people wear.
Yes, not only will we be doing War of 1812 uniforms part of the time this summer, but our normal uniform that we wear is from the 1880s. And the reason that we do that is that Fort Mackinac was a military outpost all the way until 1895, and physically it's original. Everything in Fort Mackinac is original in terms of the buildings. And so it creates a backdrop where it is most appropriate to put soldiers in uniforms from that late 19th century period. And at that time, the Americans wore a uniform that was inspired by the Prussian army, which was the dominant army of the world at the time, and has these very distinctive helmets that have spikes on the top. And people come in and they think they've landed in a German fort, but no, that's the way the American soldiers dressed in the 1880s, and it allows us to interpret an era of American military history that you don't get at many places, and I think that people really appreciate that.
Phil, only a few seconds. When is the big event to commemorate the War of 1814,
The weekend of August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And on the 4th itself, on Monday the 4th of August, we will be doing a major reenactment, but we'll have special events all that weekend. We have the Niagara coming, a large a schooner that's going to be coming and docking at Mackinac. So that whole weekend, we will be doing a major bicentennial celebration at Mackinac.
Going to be a big weekend, August 2nd through the 4th. And, of course, it's just a great place to visit. Mackinac State Historic Parks. For more information, go to MackinacParks.com. That's with a C, MackinacParks.com. That's all the time we have for this week's Travel Michigan radio program. I want to thank Mark Blackwell for engineering today's show. And we'll talk to you next week right here on Travel Michigan, where your trip begins at Michigan.org.